I'm Roya Soleimani. I'm a corporate communications manager at Google, as Tara mentioned, and also an operational advisor at Pejman Mar Ventures. It's an honor to be here with all of you this morning on a Saturday, this early. Let's give yourselves another round of applause for being here and being so awake. I'm really excited for this panel today, our founders panel. We've got three exceptional young women on stage who have all done something wonderful, which is take an idea they had, a spark, if you will, and turned it into now a company, a budding and growing business, an entrepreneurial venture. So I have Sherry Hakimi here, who is the founder and CEO of SparkJers, an organizational development firm focused on diversity. We have Aileen Ansel, who's the co-founder and president of VinKind, a wine gifting service, and Eve Peters, founder and CEO of Whim, a dating concierge service and app. So actually, why don't we start with you, Sherry, our SparkJer here. And what was the spark that made you leave the consulting world and the business world that you were in to start SparkJers?
Yeah, so I actually started out in government, working in economic development for Mayor Bloomberg, and specifically was working on workforce development issues. So I thought about what affects organizations and their success quite often. After the administration ended, I went to a leadership consulting firm and worked there. The firm was completely, profit-driven, and the niche that I sort of carved out for myself was in applying our framework to the challenges of government, entrepreneurship, and women in leadership. And I realized that I wanted to be something that was bigger than myself, not purely driven by profit. To me, a purpose-driven organization is something that motivates people beyond what profit could ever do. So I realized that I really wanted to focus on addressing issues around diversity in organizations as a whole, and that's where SparkJers came from.
Awesome. And Aileen, what was your spark? What made you leave the legal profession to enter this venture that you're now starting?
Sure. After law school, I started at a big law firm, and day one, I knew it wasn't for me. It was working in a box and being told what to do at 24/7. The biggest thing for me was just being the owner of my own ideas rather than being told what to do.
I love that. And the legal profession is kind of a conventional field, right? You go to law school, you work at a law firm, and we have another person who went through that same path. And Eve, tell us a bit about what your spark was to go from going to law school to starting the company that you started.
Sure, so I think that for me, the spark was always there. But for the 3 years that I was in law school, it was just buried under a collection of maybe more practical impulses. I think there's always this tension between what sounds like a practical thing, like I should do this, I should do that. But at the end of the day, when I was finishing up law school and had the choice to continue on the legal path or go work in the dating space, which is what my company does now, and I really asked myself, what am I excited about? There's a difference between the kind of excitement you feel when it's like, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, this would be practical, and I've been trained for it, that would have been the legal path. But when I thought about building a business where I get to help people find love, and a business where I get to grow a team, and I, like Aileen said, get to be creative every day, it eventually became obvious to me that that was the path I wanted to pursue.
I love that because each of you had this kind of inflection point. And I think for those who are in the room and did something similar or maybe flirting with the idea, I hope you're able to take something away from this conversation because I think there's a lot to relate to in each of your stories. So at that inflection point when you make the decision, it's kind of a leap of faith, right? Like it's kind of diving into the deep end and not knowing, like without a life jacket. So how has your idea shifted, Sherry, from when you started and have you pivoted it and what does that look like now?
Yeah, so when we originally started, the company was named She Ventures. It just made sense at the time. My name is Sherry. It was the first two letters of my name, and we were focused on diversity issues. What I quickly saw was that the image that people got of our firm was that we were a women's organization or that we were working on women's issues. I'm not really sure what that means, but that's what we were doing supposedly. So we realized that we needed to shift to a more gender-neutral name, and that actually reflected our worldview, which is that the organizational issues of gender leadership imbalance or just gender imbalance, work-life balance, bias, discrimination, those things don't just affect women, they affect everyone, men, minorities, LGBT individuals, and also company performance. So we ended up shifting in terms of our brand and then also in our worldview to make it more inclusive of everyone to strengthen organizations as a whole.
Launch and iterate, right? That's great. And Eileen, how about you? How has VinKind, formerly Vinlighten, shifted, and what was the kind of process and challenges along the way?
Yeah, so when we left our law firm jobs, or when I left my law firm job earlier this year, it was to start a company called Vinlighten, which was a wine education company. And that was really our passion project that I was excited about launching, where you would be able to learn about wine at home. But iterating was a process of numbers for us and scalability and logistics. We were really excited about our wine education idea, but just 2 months ago even, we were doing numbers again, and we just saw that the gifting side of our company was so much more efficient and scalable that it was just kind of an aha moment where it was the most logical thing to do to pivot and say, let's just focus on sending wine to people as a service, similar to flower delivery. Now we're doing wine delivery. So if you're excited about that, check us out.
So where do I sign up, right? And so the challenges along the way, and maybe you can talk about scaling, because you just mentioned scaling. How do you go from building something that you know is actually the product that you want and scaling it up and getting folks to sign on and join and expand beyond San Francisco, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get it a lot, especially because an app in the dating space has this network effect requirement and a critical mass requirement where you can't have a dating app with just 10 people on it. You have to have a big bunch all at once. In our particular case, we sort of doubled up the time that we were spending developing the product. We already got to work amassing a network of people through a wait list, just because you can sell an idea and sell a product before it's ready in the market. And this applies across a number of industries. So that's kind of how we got our start. And as far as scaling and growing, I think for us, it's been a combination of earned media and word of mouth referrals. And that's really what we're focusing right now.
So Sherry, let's talk a bit about how you've pivoted the idea and you're also working to scale. What does that look like in your industry where you're advising companies, and kind of what's your take on what Silicon Valley needs in this space?
My goodness. So our strategy so far has been to target both startups and small companies. So we're building relationships with VCs, and we're also building relationships with entrepreneurs. Because for us, helping companies build right from the ground up is a good starting point. Going into an established organization that's already pretty set in its ways is a bit larger of a challenge than we're prepared to take on right now. So what we've been really focused on is, building up a toolkit and creating packages of services that entrepreneurs can easily, utilize, and then also VCs can also get their hands around and access in order to help strengthen their portfolio companies.
Awesome. So talking about building up a company, right? I think a lot of startups especially are kind of growing and growing and growing and not being thoughtful about some of those nuances. How have you grown your teams? And especially being non-technical founders, how are you making sure that the technical expertise you have in the room is delivering what you need for your end user and your product? And can you share some of the trials and tribulations with the group here on just growing the team and what that looks like, what some of the pain points are and what some of the positive points are as well? Any of you, yeah?
Okay. So we originally started wanting to build a platform that quantified and codified organizational behavior so that we could actually measure the sort of intangibles, like the things that came up in the Ellen Pao case, so that we could actually measure the things that were brought up on a basis of data. We hit a lot of technical challenges around that, legal issues, technical issues, so we've actually sort of put that on the back burner for now. In terms of growing the team, for us it's been very organic. People have been attracted to the purpose of the firm. So we're still a small team, but for me, everything comes back to purpose. I think that if the purpose is strong enough, if they believe in what you're doing, and if you're part of something that's bigger than yourself, it motivates you in a way that nothing else will be able to.
Awesome. Eileen?
Yeah, so right now it's just me and my business partner, and it has been hard, I won't lie. Having two individuals that do not have tech backgrounds, it is difficult, and it's humbling because you think you know everything, and then you realize you don't know 90% of the things out there as well. So we are working with an outsourced tech person, but it's really ironic also living in San Francisco and needing to find tech help, because you could probably throw a rock and find a software engineer, but having someone actually commit to a startup is very difficult unless you're the next Twitter or you have millions of dollars of funding. So that has been a surprising shock to me, how hard it is to find tech help out here unless you have, you know, a lot of money to pay someone, unless they want to do it as a hobby.
So maybe someone in this room has a spark as well. I mean, keep your eyes open today. And Eve, how about you? You have, I mean, your app is probably the most technical here, and is, you know, how have you confronted that challenge and grown your team?
I've learned a lot of lessons along the way in team building. To be honest, I have probably let go of just as many people as I've hired. We're a team of 4. It's myself and 2 engineers and a designer. I think one of the most important things, and people told me this, but it's one of those lessons that you kind of have to learn the hard way. One of the most important things is culture fit. When I first started, I was eager to move quickly and eager to hire the first person I would find who had the matching skill set, and that was my focus. Okay, oh, you're a Rails engineer and you're willing to come be a part of this startup. That was almost enough for me, and I didn't really vet people in the beginning as carefully as I should have, and ended up being disappointed by those results, because if you're not getting along well, you're not seeing eye to eye as far as the mission and the purpose, that's really gonna tear you apart at the seams. So over time, I learned to be more patient and not act out of desperation in hiring. And I found the best way for us to find team members is to see, actually, all 3 of our team members right now are people who came to me because they heard about WIM or were using WIM, and it was an idea that attracted them. And so those inbounds, I think, have been really great finds for us.
Awesome. It sounds like what you're talking about is piggybacking off of what Sherry's working with organizations to do, right? So you're building fast, you want to grow capacity, but there's some things, you know, culture-wise. How do you measure for that in a new organization, right? How do you help an organization or a budding startup, maybe one of theirs, actually think through those issues as they're starting to grow and scale?
Yeah. So, so we start with really the purpose, the vision, and the mission, and we try to build everything from there. Everything needs to align, everything needs to make sense, and people need to believe in it at the end of the day. So that's really the starting point for us. As far as organizational culture goes, you know, the 4 things that we focus on are making sure that the organizational culture is suitable, strong, scalable, and sustainable. So those are really the 4 criteria that we have come up with. There's no formula per se for organizational culture. It's really unique. It's a unique social and psychological environment, and we work with the founders, we work with the stakeholders within the company on a one-on-one basis to help them figure out what the right environment is for them.
Awesome. So I think each of us here, and probably everyone in the room, has mentored or had a mentor. How does that work when you kind of, again, dive into the deep end and are entering this kind of whole new territory? Do you have any experience there, Sherry, you want to share?
Sure. So for me, it's not so much formal mentorship, but more, I guess, because I have a background in government, I like to call it my kitchen cabinet, which Roy is actually a part of. So for me, it's this trusted group of advisors, close friends, confidants, people that I can go to when I'm having a rough day or when I'm facing a particular challenge at work that I don't know who else to turn to. Just essentially people who are there to help me think through a problem, to help me see something from a different angle. They're my kitchen cabinet. They're there whenever I need them.
Yeah, I feel like with mentorship in particular, it could be someone that's 1 or 2 steps ahead of you career-wise, someone who's done something similar. And I always say no one can help you if they don't know you're looking, right? No one is going to knock down your door and say, hey, how can I help you? So it's about being really vocal about what you need, and whether that's turning to your friends, your network, a day like today, where there's probably many potential mentors sitting to your right and left. Did someone else want to add on the mentorship side, kind of how that helps?
Sure. I'd like to add that my friends are my biggest mentors. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of people in my network that started their own companies and were the first few engineers or designers at startups. So I always turn to them and ask for advice or what I should do or timing or pivoting questions. So I'm fortunate enough also to have these folks in my network as friends.